people, more jobs, and more businesses are coming to the Charleston area. Today, I talk one-on-one with the Charleston Area Metro Chamber of Commerce CEO, Bryan Derreberry, for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Bryan Derreberry, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Hey, Quintin, it's great to see you again, and I'm happy to be visiting with you today.
Oh, I appreciate it greatly. Obviously, you are the president and CEO of the Charleston Area Chamber of Commerce, and I know that you guys have been extremely busy lately. What's new? What's now with the chamber?
Well, what's new is last week we learned that we were one of 32 organizations in the United States to receive an economic development assistance grant of $8.4 million to initiate a healthcare talent pipeline over the next 3 years. So we're really excited about that. It allows us to work with all of our hospitals, doctors, other healthcare providers to identify people in our metro area that typically haven't had the opportunities for jobs in the healthcare sector. So everything we do in that talent pipeline will be to identify positions that they can receive training and qualify for, and then also to develop career paths beyond their initial position. So number one, we feel very humbled and honored to have received that. It's going to be called the Low Country Career Consortium, and it's a collaborative effort that allows us to, again, think wisely about job opportunities in the healthcare sector, which is one of our highest demand fields, and positions all of our citizens that are interested in those opportunities to gain equal access and training for future careers. So big win. Only one other chamber in the country received one of those. So 509 applications, and just very excited to be having been selected to receive that. So that was the big news on the chamber front last week.
And Bryan, let me ask you this. Where is that pipeline right now for healthcare talent?
Yeah, that pipeline, I think all of the people that will be allied stakeholders and partners in that, every day they are working to identify the best possible talent. And this just gives us more resources to have a set of integrated services to reach out into different populations that might have never considered healthcare as a career, and to recruit them in a very targeted way. So that's how talent pipelines work across the country. We have the potential, once we get this one up and running effectively, to do other ones for business sectors across the region. So it's kind of moving from maybe a shotgun approach to a high-powered rifle with a scope, and targeting in directly to not only the positions, but the populations that might want to become part of our healthcare providers in the area.
And what are those populations that you all are looking at right now?
Well, it's really the front side of the process. So getting it allows us to begin to identify where are people that would be interested in the opportunities, and then what does the outreach look like? What does the intake look like? What does the training look like? What does the placement look like? And then what does career advancement look like? So all those pieces are yet to be finalized. The work over the next 6 months will really allow us to hone in on what you identify with regard to where will be the people that we're working to recruit into the opportunities. So really dynamic chance for us as a metro area to provide people with equal access to job opportunities. So we're excited about it.
This is a simplistic question, Bryan, but where exactly is the access to jobs now here in the Tri-County region?
Say that one more time, Quintin.
Yes, sir. Let me ask you a simplistic question, that is, where exactly is the access to jobs right now in the Tri-County region?
Yeah, I think that one of the things we do every year that helps employers, colleges, universities, the K through 12 system understand is we do a talent demand analysis. And that allows us to look at where are the fields of employment that have the highest demand. And typically we look at the top 10. Interestingly, that'll be coming out next month. And healthcare is always in the top 5. And then you have other positions like travel and tourism, food and beverage, advanced manufacturing. So folks that make things. But it's a nice way for us to be able to say, okay, sector and employer, we hear your need, and then to share that with really our K through 20 education system and also workforce development organizations in the region to begin to provide the types of employees that are needed. It's a pretty sophisticated approach. I've lived in other areas where it wasn't that strategic and focused. So we'll know literally, we're ready to produce that in the next month, where those top fields are. So the other way we use that, Quintin, and I think you'll appreciate this, we use it within the public school systems where young people are sitting down with their counselors and their parents, and they're doing college and career planning. So there are obviously opportunities here today that didn't even exist a dozen years ago. I mean, Boeing had just opened at that point. There was no Volvo. Mercedes looked dramatically different. So today, a young person can sit down and say, oh, I want to build a commercial jet someday, or I want to build an automobile, or I want to build the parts that go into those, or I want to have a career in healthcare, and I'd never thought about it before. So we're trying to make everybody in the system a little smarter, a little bit better able to see around the corner with regard to where are the future career opportunities and what kind of people do we need in those roles so they can have a great career and our employers can have the talent they need.
And what are those future career opportunities that COVID has created for this region?
You know, I think in many ways the pandemic was a refining fire. It burned away a lot of the DOS and said, you know, here are the things that we do well as a region. I think that's very impactful. I don't think it dramatically changed what we do. Obviously, healthcare and our ability to think about public health changed dramatically. So we were very fortunate to have an amazing healthcare system. I think it got elevated during that process. It became even more telling in our ability to reopen the economy. You know, I think there were some things that caused disruptions. I think we'll have a lot more of a national-based supply chain, and that means there's going to be even greater importance on our port being 52 feet. We're seeing a lot of warehousing being built right now, so the turn on demand will be much more readily achieved with those products right here in the greater Charleston area and throughout the Southeast. So I think some things stood out that probably would not have received the attention minus a pandemic.
And Brian, let me ask you, this might be a silly question here, but when exactly did the Charleston region economy open right after COVID?
Well, you know, it's interesting. We worked with a number of our county governments, our city governments. We worked with, obviously, our major hospital systems to look at the safety in doing that. I think we had a governor at the state level that recognized the importance of opening the economy in a way that was safe and respectful of everyone's well-being. And I think we started to see a lot of really strong green branches and leaves as we got to midsummer of 2020. And then I think as we headed into the fall, unlike many states outside of the Southeast, our economy was already regaining its legs. Lots of great recovery stories in 2021 and entering into 2022. South Carolina Ports Authority is now having record TEUs. Our food and beverage industry, travel and tourism, has had almost a full recovery. Our retail is above where we were in 2019. So I talked to a lot of my peers across the country, and we'll be in an upper quartile that's recovered. There's a lot of areas that are still struggling mightily coming out of the pandemic as we enter into an endemic. So lots of great decisions. And I think just one of the things that always stands out, Quintin, for me is that somebody says, what's the most impressive thing about the greater Charleston economy? And I say it's the number of pieces in our economic pie. So we're fortunate to have Joint Base Charleston. We're fortunate to have the port. We're fortunate to have advanced manufacturing, IT. We're just very blessed to have a great travel and tourism industry. And the list goes on and on. Amazing healthcare, one of the top systems in the Southeast. So we had a lot of different places where we could recover, where if you're in an area that maybe has only one or two or three pieces of the pie when it comes to your economy, you can be hit a lot harder. So I think we've come out well. Our unemployment now is at or below where it was heading into 2020. So again, lots of good indicators. The other thing we're doing that people don't recognize sometimes is we're doing really well in attracting 25 to 50-year-old folks that have college educations. We're one of the tops in the nation for attracting skilled and well-educated talent. And that helps all those employers in those different sectors to be able to grow effectively. So it's, we've come through well.
Yeah. And I'm in that 25 to 54 demographic there.
There you go. I'm not going to card you this morning. You don't have to pull out your license.
I'm just 37, that's all.
There you go. There you go. You're in the sweet spot.
There you go. Exactly right. But let me ask you, okay, that brings me to my next question, Bryan, because what exactly are the changing demographics in this region?
Well, I think, what we continue to see, Quintin, is that we're at a net 33 people per day. So that is both in-migration and births over deaths. So nice, positive, steady growth. Our growth over the last 30 years has been somewhere between 2 to 3% a year. So it hasn't been a wild blast up to 10, 15, 20%. And people say, well, what does that really mean? Well, we went to Tampa last year for a Metro Leader visit, and they grow at 144 people a day. So I think sometimes you have to, and we were in Seattle a number of years prior, and they're between 230 and 240 a day at that point in time. So obviously bigger metros. And again, what we're positive about and also concerned about is you want to have that nice steady growth. I've lived in metro areas where it's an out-migration. And that's not a good deal for property value, for taxes, for quality of your schools, for the mix of your employers. So, by 2030, we'll be over 1 million people. And again, I think the implication there is we have to realize that we need to do things smart, fast, and make the right investments. So whether that's things like the Low Country Rapid Transit, high-speed bus lanes, that'll be from almost Somerville down to the peninsula,
right.
Whether that's thinking about the quality of our infrastructure, and that goes from everything from concrete and asphalt to equitable digital access. Is everybody in our metro able to both access the internet and then have the tools necessary, whether it's a young person that's in school or a mom and dad that's working virtually? So you got to look at that whole mix with that growth and make sure that you stay ahead. I think too that we've been wise in our area because we appreciate the aesthetic beauty and the fact that we want to have a balanced manner in which we grow. So I think those are all important decisions. We continue to be a very attractive place to come and live. I spoke to a group out of Daniel Island a couple of weeks ago. They're Rotary, and the young man that was president of that Rotary, his dad had just moved here from Indiana, and I welcomed him. And I had received a question from the audience about, can we slow all this growth down? And I said, well, I'll let you talk to the father and son here with the dad who just relocated, and let the dad know that we don't want him to come here. So it got a big laugh.
Yeah.
And, I think people just have to recognize when you live in a place, whether it's Condé Nast, Travel or Leisure, national rankings, people are very excited about what we have to offer. And, at times somebody may wish that economic development and population growth was like a faucet, that it could be turned on and turned off. And Quintin, that's just not the reality. So as we continue to grow, we have to continue to make the right investment decisions, have elected leaders that are capable of making the right investments. And then I think we all have to think about the power of growing up versus growing out. So density will become important. And where are there places in our metro area where they would lend themselves to greater density? Somebody said to me one time that you can't have density and urban sprawl. You have to have one or the other. And so I think those are decisions that we're all going to need to be thoughtful about in the future, because our opportunities to continue to do well with our employer base and citizens who want to move here and citizens that want to stay here.
Right.
Now you have a chance as a young person to dream those dreams of making things that travel around the world right here from Greater Charleston. So I shared with the group that I spoke to, I wouldn't trade our problems for any other metros. So every metro has problems to figure out, and we just have to do it well.
Yeah, and I know you're busy, so you cut me off whenever you need to. But let me ask you this: what is that employer base right now, right here in the Charleston region?
Yeah, the employer base is very, very dynamic. It's it's unique to have three original equipment manufacturers that are global. So that in of itself is a unique calling card. When the Charleston Regional Development Alliance is doing international recruitment, you can ask their project managers. They get into places now that would have never happened without Boeing and Volvo and Mercedes.
Right.
So it allows us to attract the potential for smaller corporate headquarters in the years ahead. It also allows us to attract a lot of foreign direct investment. South Carolina, for a number of years, per capita size has been number one in the world. I should say number one in the United States for foreign direct investment. So it's an attractive place to locate and grow a business. So that keeps us healthy from the regard of the mix that we have. We've talked about medical care. Just Medical University of South Carolina, all of our hospitals, extremely dynamic. We've talked about, a lot of times people don't realize that the Port of Charleston is such an economic driver, $26 billion statewide, but also we serve for Tennessee and North Carolina. So, those kinds of dynamic businesses and sectors, as we affectionately say, allow us to fight way above our weight class. I had a good example of that the other day. We got a call from the Hampton Roads, Newport News, Virginia chamber, and they want to come down and do a Metro leadership visit. And they said our group that is selecting communities is as excited about your community as any that we've ever been to. And here's their last 4 years, Quintin: Nashville, Pittsburgh, Denver, and Salt Lake. 15 years ago, we wouldn't be on that, within that group of major metros. That's who we compete against now. So I think a lot of times just helping our parents and our young people and all of our citizens recognize what a dynamic economy this is. And, sometimes people just have to slow down and look up When you're driving into Charleston International Airport or driving out, look to your right or left and see all those 787 Dreamliners that are being manufactured. When you're driving up I-26, think about that Volvo exit and all the cars that are being made. So again, just a really unique period in our history as we continue to develop a great economy.
I was just in Nashville 3 weeks ago for work, an amazing city there. But let me ask you, how many existing companies did the Chamber help to expand in 2021?
Well, what we do along those lines is that we look at all 1,500 of our members, and our job is to come alongside of them and provide them with business development and professional development opportunities for their staff. So, as I said earlier, Charleston Regional Development Alliance does the recruitment. Our job is to make sure that when companies get here, that they have the best possible business environment. We have 3 full-time lobbyists, George Ramsey up in Columbia during the General Assembly session, and then Bailey Vincent and Scott Barheit work with our 30 governments locally. And it's all partnership-based lobbying. What can we do to make this metro area attractive to businesses and talent? What are the barriers that need to come down? What are the opportunities that need to be available? Then we have a huge series around professional development for our employers. Leadership Charleston, Leadership Discovery, Charleston Insight. So regardless if your employee is 26 and just learning to be a manager, or 56 and in the C-suite, we're providing development opportunities. The other thing I mentioned is we do an annual Metro Leadership Visit, which I think is one of the most powerful things we do. We're going to Boston, September 21st to 23rd, with 86 leaders. So what can we learn in the laboratory of another community when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion, when it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to making wise decisions about resiliency? Obviously, they have a lot of water around being on a peninsula like we are. So what have they done with resiliency decisions around sea level rise, flooding, et cetera? So the power of that is you get 86 people away and they learn, they bond together, and then when they come back, decision making is easier because, oh yeah, I sat with that Berkeley County council member, or I sat with a city of Charleston elected or the mayor. And that's what allows communities to excel. It's not your ingredients that matter so much. It's how you come together to mix them. And I've lived in places that have had less ingredients than others, but they really knew how to line up to leverage them. And that's what we're working on here is how do we line up to help our region leverage 21st century globally competitive ingredients. So that's the fun thing we get to do every day.
And what more ingredients do you need for this region to make this region successful 5-10 years from now?
That's a question that we think about every single day. And I think probably there are 2 that stand out right now, Quintin, that are very challenging. The first one is attainable housing. We have a low housing stock. With that 33 people a day, we should have more than 8,000 homes cited for occupancy annually. Now, we did that in 2020 and 2021, but we hadn't done that back to 2008. So we have a classic. You remember that Econ 101 class? We got a supply and demand issue. The supply is not great enough for the demand. So when I spoke to the realtors about a month ago, they said we should have in our area 10,000 plus what they call open doors. So those are homes, apartments, or townhouses for sale or rental. At that point in time, when I spoke, we had 1,100. So we have started an attainable housing coalition, and we've added Craig Logan to our staff as our leader on that. So how do we come together over the years ahead to find ways to build both more housing at a better price point. So I think that's a number one ingredient. The second ingredient is interesting, and some of it's part of the pandemic. Your reshaping question, the Great Resignation, the Great Retirement, whatever you want to call it. Talent is now our number one employer issue. Finding it, keeping it, developing it. So very low unemployment, but also a lot of people made choices during the pandemic to either go into a new career or to work virtually. So there's a real kind of shakeup in the labor force, and we're trying to work with our employers to make sure that they're well positioned to be able to gain the talent they need. So those are two biggies. I think the other one is, sometimes we forget there are 396 other metro areas in just the United States. That doesn't count other continents, other countries, other towns, other cities, and they're all vying for our employers and our talent. So how do we continue to be thoughtful and wise around what our quality of place looks like, what our business environment looks like? You can make choices that knock you out of being attractive to investment or to talent. We've done a good job in being thoughtful around those choices. So that would be the third thing, just keeping our eye on the ball and making sure that we've got a great business environment and a great place to live, learn, and earn. So people want to come here with their families. I mean, those are the top three: attainable housing, talent, and let's make this a place that people choose to come and stay.
Now, with attainable housing, Bryan, let me ask you this. What will that price point, or what should that price point be in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, what we know now is that the average median wage for the jobs that we're adding would call for homes between $350,000 to $600,000. That's where we need to begin to be thoughtful about what's built in the future. That's going to require partnerships between private sector, residential developers, governments. We're going to also have to look at the cost of, do we have a regulatory and zoning process that takes too long and is too expensive? So all those things go into the mix, Quintin. It's a couple decade effort to get where we need to go. This is not, we call this issue one that's not for the faint of heart. We'll build metrics that'll allow us to examine annually how we're doing across the region and within different governing units and adding attainable housing. So you have to have markers. The other thing that's pretty fascinating is we know that those 20 stops on the low country rapid transit, within a quarter to a half mile of the stops, there will be significant residential, commercial, and retail development. We've looked at other areas with rapid transit bus lanes and stops, and we've got to get those right. A lot of communities along that line are doing something right now called transit-oriented development overlays.
Oh, yes.
So how do we zone it? How do we make it attractive for residences, businesses, retail, groceries, restaurants? And that way you take cars off the road. If I can walk or have a less than a mile drive, then I'm not having to hop on infrastructure and go 5, 10, 15 miles to go to work, to buy my groceries. So that's going to be a fascinating change for our region, transformative in different segments of that overall set of stops. So that's another thing that we're excited to plan for. We've seen what happened in Salt Lake City, Cleveland, Richmond, other places that have done that well. And there's a real both renaissance for those areas, but also it looks much more livable. I don't think any of us want to hop in a car and travel 20 minutes to buy groceries or go to a nice restaurant or go to work. Somebody might be able to walk to work, ride a bike to work. So it's going to be exciting to see what happens there.
Yes, sir. And three more questions for you, Bryan, before I wrap this up. What public partnerships do you have right now for this particular initiative as far as attainable housing?
Well, I'm real excited to see what the city of Charleston has done. Charleston County is beginning to actively examine what those partnerships look like. Both of those communities have been very open to meeting with developers and saying, where are we getting it right? Where are we getting it wrong? And Quintin, a lot of times those partnerships begin with conversations. So we had Charleston County's leader come to our board of directors and provide an update. And we had 4 developers in the room. And they started a cool dialogue right in that meeting. And he said, I want to get together with you guys and better understand what we need to do to be in a place where we can build the attainable housing that we want. So now our conversation has moved from, is this real and do we need it, to how do we do it? And that's good movement because we've been providing data and encouragement for elected officials to say, we got a big problem. And so I think we're at that cool inflection point where we can really begin to get down to brass tacks and nails now on how we do it. So it's exciting. And more of that will occur across the region. That's part of what Craig Logan on our team's facilitating. We've got elected leaders that want to understand it, want to do it. And both the beauty and the challenge, Quintin, is that what works in Somerville may not work in North Charleston. What works in Charleston may not work in Mount Pleasant. So it's going to be tailored, individualized. As long as everybody's doing it region-wide, then we've got a shot.
You talk about that data, Bryan. What metrics are you looking at right now as far as attainable housing in the future?
Yeah, I love it, Quintin. You just asked the question that got above my pay grade. Those folks on our government relations team, they're working with other public sector folks that have this on their agenda, and they're drilling down on all that. We have an opportunity for a Charleston County housing bond referendum coming up. That'll give some of the funding necessary for public-private partnerships, but they're way deep into that now. And 23, 24, I think we're going to see a lot of exciting things. They're going to respond to your question. What does the housing stock look like? What are the mixes? A lot of our area, unfortunately, and we're working on it, is all single-family zoning sided. We need duplexes. We need multiplexes. We need all kinds of we need height restrictions to move upward.
Sure.
So all that has to be in the mix. We had really good visits to Raleigh and Tampa over the past 2 years, and they've had aggressive mayors that have said, hey, we got a problem. We need to solve it. So we've got some good models out there we can learn from, and they're digging in and finding all that stuff.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's exciting.
Exciting. Now, what model will be ideal for this region?
Whatever fits our region. As we affectionately say, if you've seen one chamber, you've seen one chamber. Well, if you've seen one metro area, you've seen one metro area. Basically, what I think that they're doing is they're looking at the housing stock mix that is suitable for the Low Country. I think the other thing that we've done that we haven't seen, and it really speaks volumes about our region wanting to do this collectively, is that, Raleigh's doing it, but it doesn't extend to Wake County. And what we've decided is we need all 3 counties. We need Charleston, we need Dorchester, and we need Berkeley. It's a big enough challenge that you just can't say City of Charleston's going to solve it or Charleston County is going to solve it. So a real regional based approach to attainable housing. Also what that allows you to do, and we think this is the real beauty, if I'm going to work at Volvo, I'd like to live within 10 miles of Volvo. Now, I may not. I may choose to drive farther, but how do we get the attainable housing proximate to employment centers? Because that's the bulk of what we all drive. So that'll be the other factor, whether you heat map it or, look at different geographic proximate circles. Those are things that'll unfold over the next couple of years to your point, to help us do it in a way that fits our metro area.
And where are those geographical proximity circles right now?
We got work to do. Because the fascinating part of this, Quintin, is that
yes, sir.
When you go to solve a new problem, you can't use old methodology.
Yeah.
And our old methodology was to kind of build attractive places to live, wherever the property was. So when you have a series of factors now, is it proximate to low country rapid transit? Is it near an employment center? What is the price point? What kind of density? All these things begin to give you a different set of metrics when you begin to make decisions. So in the past, it might have been, okay, somebody wants to develop something. Do they meet our zoning requirements? That was your metric. Now, when all these other metrics come into play, all of a sudden you're being more strategic, you're being wiser, because you're thinking about, is it near schools? Is it near transit?
Right.
Is it near places of employment? Is it near restaurants? Is it near grocery stores? So all of a sudden, as we said earlier, can that commute be a walking commute, a biking commute within 1.5 miles to 2 miles versus long distances? So, and again, as we say, these are not overnight sensations. Probably to answer your question, the places that we have looked at that have done it the best, they've said, just like we've said, this is a 25-year deal. It's going to take a while. There'll be low-hanging fruit
right
along the way, but to really do it full out, it's going to take time and a lot of good decisions. And the power of elected bodies saying, we're in it for the long term. We're not in it for a 4-year cycle. Doesn't matter if it's new mayor, new city council, new county commissioner, new county commission chair.
Yeah.
We're all bought in because you can't get it done in one election cycle.
Oh, no.
No, it'll never happen.
No.
So the places that end up winning, they get that kind of front side, long-term buy-in, and they stay at it. They stay at it.
Yeah.
So your concentric circles, I didn't mean to crack you up, but they just need a lot of work with a new framework and a new methodology.
Yes.
If you ask me the same question 10 years from now, it'll be a totally different answer. We'll be well down the track and figuring it out and doing it well. And it's just because communities and regions, they haven't really thought this way up until the last 10 years.
Oh, wow. Bryan Derreberry with the Charleston Area Metro Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Quintin, thank you so much. Great conversation. And let's stay in touch. Thank you for what you do throughout our region and making it real.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Anytime.